correct. Correct. Correct.
And for the record, I love puppies.
Hey guys, guess what? Ben can't read what he wrote down. The only person in my life I've ever met that writes stuff down and can't read it.
Unbelievably great stuff. I'm like, I wrote it down. It's like, uh-oh, I can't read it.
Oh, he's one of a kind, guys.
One of a kind, love affair.
Hey now, whoa. Let's save that song of the day, all right?
That wasn't going to be my song of the day, but as soon as you said that, one of a kind, love affair, one of the great songs of the 70s, the greatest decade of all time.
You singing once is pushing it, all right? Twice, two different songs? I don't know.
All right, I'll just stick with that as my song of the day.
How's it going, everybody? Live stream chat room. We need your help today, all right? Turns out, slow news day locally.
Aw, come on, man. What are you talking about? We had a debate last night.
Locally.
Oh, locally? Come
slow
on.
news day. So weigh in with your thoughts on last night's debate, huh?
They were going at it.
Oh, my God. It was inaudible at times.
Love it.
Hey, CBS, let's round these people up a little better, huh? Okay, well, hold on now. Mayor Pete. Okay. Then Biden. What do you got to do? Interrupt to get airtime?
Yeah, you just did it, and people love you for it.
It was insane.
Love that stuff.
Your thoughts, one word and why, maybe. If you could describe last night's debate in one word and why. What is that word? That's always fun. Weigh in with those thoughts. All right, we'll be reading those throughout the day. Watch your language. Okay, the Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, February 26th is just moments away. Before we get into all this, we got to thank the following unions for sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Unions, couldn't do it without you. Thanks. And of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. All right, live streamers, you've been waiting long enough. Ben Joravsky, hit him with that song of the day. I bet some people just tune out after the song of the day. That's all I needed to hear. Done.
Well, I was going to sing one song. Which song should I sing? The one I was going to sing or the one you put in my mind?
I'm feeling equal. They're all both going to sound bad, so just go.
One of a kind love affair is the kind of love that you read about in a fairy tale. Ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-da-boo.
Oh, ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-da-boo.
Had you ever heard that song?
Never.
You know that song?
Never in my life.
Yeah, it's way before your time. Spinners, 1970s, greatest decade of all time.
Millennials, hang tight. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. is Wednesday, February 26th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's our weekly visit with legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson. Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson is back. And it's Jaquie Algee with Ikeya Johnson of SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana. And now your host. What's so funny?
Nothing. Just thinking about that song of the day.
It's awful. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this After the Fight Wednesday, and here's why. Great debate last night. I'm just putting it out there, folks. I love the debate. Okay. I know by the way, I know there's a lot of people out there disagree with me. I checked in with some of my friends. They're still not watching it. They're like, oh, I'm too important to watch debates.
Hey, McDumpkey.
Mick, I'm busy, okay? So come on, Mick, you can watch a debate every now. Nope, not gonna do it. Anyway, I've watched every single debate, D. All right? I'm like an expert on the debate. Last night was a go. I like when they mix it up. Bada boom, bada boom. And by the way, and I'm watching it. I watch it on my TV. Let me tell you something. I'm putting up with a lot of stuff. As you know, D, I live right next to the train, right? The train goes by. Every time the train goes by, if I'm watching regular TV, it screws it all up. It freezes the TV. Did you know that? We got the funkiest TV in the world. My friends won't come over to watch games because we're watching the game. All of a sudden, it freezes. Well, what's going on, man? All right, so anyway, I'm watching this debate, but I found something out, D. This is something you may not have known. That if I stand in front of the TV and raise my hand in the air with a fork in it, you put a fork in the air, somehow or other,
Ben Franklin over here.
This is me watching the debate last night, standing in front of the TV. Come on, Bernie, give him hell. All right, I'm going to break it down. See, hey, man, I'm working hard to watch this freaking debate. We'll be talking about the debate all day with our guests. A few thoughts, just random thoughts. I'm going to start with Bernie. Let's just start with Bernie. Man, after the Nevada caucus, when Bernie kind of mopped the floor with them, you knew they were coming after him, and boy, did they come up. They were like pounding him, man. Oh, my God. It's kind of got me feeling bad for Bernie at times, like... He was standing in the middle, so he would be looking left, looking right. You would think that it was just utter catastrophe for the Democrats. I still have some of my friends of the centrist persuasion are still calling me up. I can't believe Bernie is supporting saying nice things about Castro. It's so bizarre. I mean, this is just the politics. This is American politics. Castro was a communist dictator. There's communist dictators all over the world, but some you're allowed to negotiate with, and others you have to castigate. It's politics. Florida is, to a large degree, politically controlled or is strongly influenced by a very vibrant, get-out-the-vote Cuban-American community that despises Castro. So the politics of Castro in this country, you have to always be against Castro. Apparently, it's okay for Trump to make friends with Putin, who I want to point out was the head of the KGB at the end of the communist reign, just pointing that out. But it's just the way politics goes in this country. So now Bernie's in the ropes because he said something nice about Cuba under Castro, and he's sticking to his guns on that one. And I'm like, I just can imagine the advisors behind the scene in the Bernie campaign. I'm sure there's a faction who's saying, boss, you got to throw Castro under the bus here. We're getting clobbered on Castro. Nope, I'm not going to do it. That's my Bernie imitation. It's
getting better.
Is it really?
Yeah.
$27.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, he's getting pounded. Bloomberg on the complete other side, of the ideological spectrum.
So funny. He's in these things.
Wait, time out. He did better in this debate than he did in the first debate, which is really saying nothing because the bar is so low because he was so bad in the first debate. And what Bloomberg doesn't seem to understand is just because he's a gazillionaire who's been the boss in every scene like every room he's been in for the last 30 or so years. It doesn't work that way in the debate stage. So he stands there like he expects them just to, ask him the questions. You don't understand. You got to raise your hand. It's like third grade. You got to raise your hand or they won't talk. So Bloomberg's like, I could see it like his brain. It's like, oh, I have to raise my hand? I am a gazillionaire. I do not raise my hand. I'm buying ABC TV. Oh, no, excuse me, it was CBS. I'm going to buy CBS right now. Finally, at the end, he started raising his hand a little. And he had this great line. I don't know if you had this line. These guys, they have their writers in the back room. They have guys like me in the back room. Writers, you know what I'm saying? Faceless writers in the back room. Coming up with great lines that here, boss, here's a great line for you. I got it. And some are better than others in delivering. Say what you will about Mayor Pete. And Dennis is a huge fan of Mayor Pete. Just teasing. Mayor Pete may be really bad at winning black voters to his campaign, even though he comes from a city that's, 25% black. He may be really bad at that, which is kind of essential to winning the Democratic nomination. But he's really good, in my humble opinion, at delivering quips that have been pre-prepared. So last night, remember the one that was about the filibuster where he was saying to Bernie, I can't deliver it nearly as good as Mayor Pete, but I got to give him credit. He did a great job, where he said something like, oh, you want to have a revolution, but you can't even pass a rules change? And then, by the way, did you notice like the crowd was very anti-Bernie last night? Was that my imagination?
Yeah.
Like who determines who gets tickets? Hey, Bernie campaign, can't you get your people in there? And the other thing is, I always thought debates were like high school graduations. You ever been to a high school graduation, D? They always say, hold your applause to the end, okay? Because it's not fair that some graduates like have a cheering section and then there's other graduates who don't have a cheering. So, like let's say you're little Benny walking down the stage, no one cheers for you, but you're Dr. D and hey, So I just thought that's how debates were run, so you're not supposed to cheer at all. But last night, man, Bloomberg had a cheering section. Mayor Pete had a cheering section. I think Tommy Steyer had one. Bernie's like, oh, they're groaning. Elizabeth Warren, like when she made took a couple shots at Bloomberg, you got like moans from the crowd. How did Bloomberg get a cheering section and not Elizabeth Warren? Do you think it has something to do with the fact that he's a gazillionaire? I'm just throwing that out there, D. Anyway, so, Mayor Pete got off that great line, which I have to give him credit. He got a great line off. But Bloomberg, the writers in the back, the Benny J's in the back room who come up with the great line, said, hey, boss, here's a great line. You bombed the last debate. What we're going to do is say, you're going to come up with a line that says, I can't believe you guys would agree to have me back on the stage after the great job I did in the first debate. And Bloomberg's like, yeah, man, that's a good line. Damn, you're good. I'm doubling your salary. That's just how I do it with D, by the way. He comes up with a good show. As soon as the show's over, D, your salary's doubled.
It's happened like once. Not doing so well these days. That was like in 2017.
I remember that. Oh, God, that was a great moment. Anyway, let's put that memory to the side for the moment.
Ruth Chris.
Ruth Chris.
That's where we went.
Yes, anyway. So Bloomberg got this great line. But unlike Mayor Pete, Bloomberg doesn't know how to deliver his line. So there's like this random moment.
Well, you should watch more Obama videos like Mayor Pete.
Yeah, Mayor Pete. Okay, we discussed this. Mayor Pete
Obamatron
is to Obama. I said this before. The great Kobe Bryant studied Michael Jordan, and you could tell that he had mastered just when he broke into the league. He just emulated Jordan. I know this is sports, and I'm losing my listeners who don't, whatever.
Yeah, make it quick. Make it quick, please.
Just trust me when I tell you, there's another sports thing coming, D. There's going to be 2 in 1. So Mayor Pete has done the same thing with Obama. He has studied Obama tapes. It's clear. It's obvious. He's mastering. He projects Obama. I'm Obama. And he's hoping that will win, and it's worked. A lot of baby boomers love him. I love him.
Well, we got the video right here. I found the video. It does side-by-side Obama to Mayor Pete. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
All right.
It's live, guys. Hang tight.
Mm-hmm.
We do every other election.
Okay. Okay. Can you play?
We get to the person who got the most votes.
Just a thought.
Brings us
Because
together.
this country
was built.
And
it is a
water
movement
coolers,
reaching into
and church basements,
and barber
and in our
shops, into
schools,
universities,
and with our
union
kids.
halls.
And if the voice
we can
can
line
change
up the
the world,
neighborhood, then we
it
can
can
line up
change
the
the
city.
Shining
Shines as a beacon
to the
around the world once more.
This is our chance to answer that call.
Okay, I you got to see it really. But yes, that's brilliant. Whoever put that together. Mayor Pete clearly studies Barack Obama. Nothing wrong with that. Barack Obama is one of the great politicians of our time. So if you want to be the best, you study the best, right, D? That's why, That's
correct.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyway, so, anyways, where was my thought? Oh, Bloomberg. So Bloomberg's trying to deliver that line. He doesn't know when to deliver it. So he just like randomly sticks it at some point where it doesn't belong. And everybody's looking. I'm like, what? But you know what, Mike? I'm going to tell you this right now. It's only your second debate. It was better than your first debate. I think the third one, you're going to get even better, all right? Just keep working on your game. It's like shooting free throws. Keep working on that game. 1, 2, 3, and release, okay? All right, that was Bloomberg. Let's see, what else? Rahm Emanuel had a great night last night. You're saying, wait, man, Mayor Rahm wasn't on the debate. No, that's true. Good point. But he fed a lot of the lines to a lot of the debaters that they used against Bernie. Now, I don't know if Rahm fed those lines or those other debates fed them to Rahm, but we did the riff on Rahm yesterday when he was on the George Stephanopoulos show this weekend, right?
Guys, if you haven't heard that, go download it. Yesterday's show, Rahm on ABC.
By the way, that was totally unscripted. Dennis said to me as I came to the studio, all right, I'm going to play you some Rahm clips. So he played the Rahm clips. Man, I went off on those. Anyway, but I'm listening to the debate last night. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are stealing Rahm's lines. And then I go, wait a minute.
I'm smart. You're not.
Yeah, they probably fed the lines to Rahm to begin with. I had it wrong. I'm giving Rahm all that credit for these brilliant insights on the George Stephanopoulos show. And it turns out that he was fed those lines. All right, Rahm, here's what you got to say. Blah, 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 blah. See, nobody comes up with their own material anymore, D. It's always some writer in the back room. Some guy like me typing. Keep him in the back room. He's not ready to be seen by the public yet. Anyway, so Rahm had a great night. They stole all his lines, all that stuff about Bernie. Remember Rahm said you got to ask him about gun control. It's so funny coming from Rahm, who told Eric Holder to shut up on gun control. I know, on a tangent here, but it's just so interesting. Blast him on gun control. Don't do as I did, do as I say. Anyway, what else? Joe Biden had a pretty good night, D, for Joe Biden. Again, the bar's low with Joe Biden. He's got that look he has.
Joey B.
Joey B's got that look, that focused look where he's like afraid that he's going to lose track of where they're going. And you know that look, that like kind of ghostly look that is in his eyes? Where are we going here? It's kind of like me when we have millennials in the studio and they do their like millennial talk.
Well, it sounds like a roundabout way of calling this guy old.
Yeah, kind of. It happens a lot, folks. I'm in the studio, Dennis and a couple other millennials, and they're like doing millennial relating. Like, remember in the 90s? Like, thank God there was this TV show. And I'm like, what? Not following that. What was the one where you guys didn't think I knew what?
DM.
DM. Ben, do you know what DM is? BM? No, DM. Oh,
BM.
Anyway, Joe Biden. But he had that great line because he's like, he couldn't get, they cut him off. The question, he would be raising his hand. They wouldn't call on him. What do I got to do?
Oh, dagnabbit.
No, he goes, it's his Catholic upbringing. I thought that was a good line, because he's polite. You defer to authority. And I thought that was a very clever line. Tommy Steyer and Amy Klobuchar's. At the risk of offending all our Amy Klobuchar and Tommy Steyer fans out there and friends out there, guys, I don't know why your candidates are in this race with Bloomberg. I've said it before. If you're a centrist, why are you supporting anybody than Michael Bloomberg? The guy's got like $gazillion, all right? Get out of the race, support him. Maybe, if he's the nominee, he'll make you the vice president or appoint you to some position in the cabinet. Anyway, that's just me. I'm just saying it's centrist. Finally, Elizabeth Warren. I love Elizabeth Warren in these debates. These last two debates, she is coming out strong. I compared her to Smokin' Joe Frazier last time we discussed this. That's, again, a 70s reference. You have to look it up. A great boxer in the 1970s, Joe Frazier out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And she just comes at it straight and hard. And Dean, I have my ranking. I ask almost all our guests, rank the president, and then my lefties friends are always ducking that one. They don't want to get, they only get to two. My lefty friends, I love my lefty friends, will go, well, Bernie, all right, Warren, Bernie. Then they start repeating. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't just literally repeat Bernie. So, you got to come up with a third. So I always go, well, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden's my third. Andrew Yang used to be my third. He dropped out of the race, so now it's Joey B. So I got to tell you, D, Elizabeth Warren's knocking on that door. Hear that door knocking? She's knocking on that door. She's doing great in these debates. We got Brandon Johnson coming in. We're going to get his thoughts on that. Anyway, I say it's on to the South Carolina primary this Saturday, and then there'll be another debate after that. We're having right into Super Tuesday. Man, I am fired up. And I am fired up about today's show as well. Great show today. Monroe Anderson will be in here. He loves Chris Matthews, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to continue that debate. I already talked to Monroe before we came in. Monroe, how's that Chris Matthews fan club coming? Coming okay? Yeah. Got that Chris Matthews tattoo on there? Okay.
I'm scared. What do we do? We gotta get rid of Bernie. Denmark.
Chris Matthews. Somehow or other, James Carville or Jim Carville, whatever he calls himself, can pull off I'm afraid of Bernie thing. Poor Chris Matthews can't do it. Anyway, Monroe will be in. We'll be talking about the debate and Trump and Chris Matthews and a lot of good things. Brandon Johnson will be in the studio. Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, a big supporter of Elizabeth Warren. See what he has to say. Brandon's been campaigning in South Carolina for Elizabeth Warren, so I'm sure he's excited about the debate. Jaquie Algee and Ikeya Johnson will be here from SEIU talking union stuff, but may have to ask them a question or two about the debate. No ducking and dodging, Jaquie. No ducking and dodging, Ikeya. You're going to have to talk about the debate, too. Plenty of political talk ahead, but before we do it, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, the man they call Dr. D with the news.
Hello. Live stream chat room. The question we're asking all of you today as we do the program, last night's debate. If you could describe last night's debate in one word, what would it be and why? One word and why. Quite a few of you have weighed in. Feel free to weigh in, and we'll read your comments before we end this segment. Hey, Ben, what do you say we find out what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't know you were going to go there.
Surprise, surprise.
One-of-a-kind love affair.
Oh, please stop. No public events scheduled for our Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, but a recent endorsement from the big fella made the local headlines, and so begins an endorsement segment on the Ben Joravsky Show.
That's correct.
The following comes from Shia Campos in Illinois Politico. Governor J.B. Pritzker's political arm has donated $57,800 to 12th District State House candidate one Margaret Croak in her race against, what's this feller's name? Jonathan
Yoni Pizer.
Yoni Pizer. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Oh, apparently he and his wife, M.K. Pritzker, have each donated $5,800 to Croak as well. Mm. She's a leader in the State Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and I believe she has not come up one time on our program. Ben, what do we know about Margaret Croak?
Okay, can I do a whole deep dive on the whole thing?
Go for it.
All right. Well, first of all, to answer your question, directly answer your question, I'm not going to be like the people in the debate last night who just answer it whichever way they want. I'm going to answer your question.
Well, thank God.
Margaret Croak was she worked for Pritzker. She worked on his campaign, and she worked in state government for him. So she's clearly an ally and supporter of J.B. Pritzker, and he's returning the favor. This is a very contentious race. This is like, how do I put this? There's certain seats that are how do I say this the right way? I want to say coveted. That's the word. They're coveted, and so you have long-term incumbents sitting in a seat. They're virtually unbeatable. There's a lot of people who would love to get the position, but they don't want to challenge the incumbent because they figure, well, they can't probably win. It'll alienate everybody, that all the friends they have in common. So you just kind of bide your time. This is the way congressional elections generally work in the city of Chicago. Like, for instance, Jan Schakowsky, she's the congresswoman from the 9th Congressional District. She'll probably be the congresswoman from the 9th Congressional District for as long as she wants the job, even though there's no shortage of ambitious politicians in the 9th who are like, when's it going to be my turn? So in this particular district, the 12th legislative district, which is on the lakefront, the North Lakefront, was for years represented by Sarah Feigenholtz, okay, D. And then Johnny Cullerton, your favorite state senator, stepped down.
I love him.
As state senator.
JC.
JC, very funny with his imitations of Mayor Daley. In fact, you met him.
I met John Cullerton. Yeah.
He was in this very studio for the Fran Spielman show, and you met him.
Funny guy.
Yeah, did he do his daily imitation?
He did like some Who's on First thing. I'm like, whatever.
He did Who's on First?
No, he didn't.
Who's on first? No, he's on second. No, he's on third. Anyway, so Cullerton retired. Sarah Feigenholz was elevated to replace him, right? She was a committeeman, got together, and they took Sarah Feigenholz, who was the state rep, made her the state senator. Now she's running for that seat. And they took Pizer, who was an aide to Mike Quigley, and they named him to fill Feigenholz's seat. So technically, he's the incumbent, though you can't say he's running for re-election because he was never elected in the first place. Are you following that, D? It's easier to understand if you take a hit or two off of that bond.
Okay, we're not smoking pot in here,
Okay, but
guys.
there's no shortage of people who want the seat, including Margaret Croak. All right, so now you got Margaret Croak saying, "Hey, I want that seat," and Pizer saying, "Sorry, I am sitting in that seat."
Shout out to Bruce. He
So
keeps
they're
the
battling.
He keeps the long Ben Joravsky show joke going. Yeah, but what high school did Margaret Croak go to?
You know what? I could make something up, but I don't play that way, so I do not know. Greg, I don't know where she's from. Actually, great question.
Now, one thing, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but Croak also was a former government affairs for Mayor Rahm Emanuel's office.
I did not know that.
Yeah, worked for Rahm Emanuel.
Okay, I will not hold that against her.
She was the Illinois Regional Field Director to the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign and the Director of Scheduling in Advance for Cook County Commissioner Bridget Gaynor.
Oh, Bridget Gaynor. Good, you're a good friend. Yeah, Bridget Gaynor. Okay, so she's got a lot of party connections. But then again, so does Pizer.
But there's a twist. Oh, honestly, it may not really be that big of a deal. Like I said, slow news day locally. All right.
Oh, come on.
But this does raise an interesting question.
And that question is?
It was just reported that our Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is also endorsing a candidate in the 12th District State House race. And no, it's not Croak. No. She's shining her light on Jonathan Pizer.
Yeah.
A longtime member of the Brad Lippett's group. And according to Ben Joravsky, before today's show, a quote, well-connected lakefront liberal.
They're all well-connected lakefront liberals. The problem is there's only one seat. So, it's like maybe they could create a second seat and they could both sit in it, but doesn't work that way. If you take a look at their list of endorsements, where did I see it? Was it Shia Capos who had the list? Shout out to Shia for a good job. Everybody's got a friend on the lakefront. This one endorses that one. This one, Tom Tunney, the alderman, is in there. Everybody has a friend. I endorse this one. I endorse that one.
And with the Lightfoot endorsement for Pizer came some money. I mean, it's no J.B. Pritzker cash. $2,500.
Oh,
nice chunk of change.
Wait,
right?
hold on. What did Pritzker give?
$50,000, $57,000.
All right. So I'm really, I was not good at numbers as a kid. I struggle with it. I'm no damn Biss, but I've learned. Okay. So for instance, with Michael Bloomberg in the race, I learned the difference between $50 billion and $3 billion. I could look at the kind of money that Michael Bloomberg throws around with his $50 billion or $60 billion and the amount of money that J.B. Pritzker throws around with his $3 billion. Now I'm learning the difference between a billionaire and a millionaire. Okay, J.B. Pritzker's a billionaire. I think Lori Lightfoot is close to a millionaire. If she's not a millionaire, she made good money being a corporate lawyer. So J.B. gave $50,000. Lori gave $2,000. I'm not making fun of the $2,500. Okay,
no,
Dave?
you shouldn't.
It's more money
You
than I
shouldn't.
could kick in.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but still, who would I rather be friends with? The guy who can give $50,000 or the woman who can give $2,500? Let me think about that, D. No, it's all principle. That's what matters.
Yeah, leave it to J.B. Pritzker to just show up somebody, huh?
I'm not a perfect person.
All right. So the governor's backing his former employee. The mayor is backing her
Friend.
well-connected lakefront liberal friend.
Yes.
Will this cause tension between our two elected leaders? More than likely not. But Shia Campos posed the bigger question, and Ben Joravsky, I'll throw it to you in a minute. Is it wise for governors or mayors to get involved in contested primaries at all? Should they just stay out? Pritzker campaign spokesman Quentin Folks told Playbook, quote, the governor will not be making any contributions to anyone in the Illinois state legislature, House or Senate during the session, but supporting a challenger in a contested race is okay.
I'm trying to think about what the distinction that spokesperson is making, and it eludes me at the moment, so I'm going to put it aside. I'm not sure what you're getting at with your question. Are you saying that...
Is it wise for governors or mayors to get involved in contested primaries?
Yes. All right, you repeated the question, so I'm now... so is it wise? In other words, can you win on it? Is there any advantage to it? I mean, if, like, J.B. Pritzker makes an endorsement in a contested race and then his candidate loses, then I guess you could say, oh, you look bad. So if you make no endorsement and you know, no one can blame you. You don't look bad. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, there is this thing in Chicago. This is so Chicago. The all-powerful endorser. Yeah, when I get behind a candidate, that candidate wins because I'm the man. I'm the woman in the city of Chicago. That's that Chicago mentality that we have, like winners and losers. And you know what, D? I remember this one. Part of the reason Tony Preckwinkle doesn't appreciate my sense of humor. One time, Tony Preckwinkle and I were in the Kenny Davis show many years ago, and this was coming after a particular, I can't remember which primary it was, and I made a joke that the only person who did worse than I did on my endorsements was Tony Preckwinkle. She gave me that look that said, "That's not funny," and then she went on. But pretty much everybody I ever supported lost. So, yeah, in Chicago, there's that mentality that if you support a loser, you're a loser, which is so typical. That's why we are losers in the city of Chicago. We have that mentality. So, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with senators or governors making endorsements. So if you lose, you lose. It's not the end of the world, and who cares what people say? They'll forget it in the next news cycle anyway.
More endorsements to discuss. We have a Cook County State's Attorney candidate endorsement to talk about. And surprise, no, it's not Kim Foxx. And no, it's not Bill the Bro Conway.
Did Jussie Smollett weigh in?
It's an endorsement from the Fraternal Order of Police, and the endorsement is for Bob Fioretti.
Ah, my old friend, Bob Fioretti, former 2nd Ward Alderman, Bob Fioretti. The man my lefty friends love to throw under a bus, and then I always point out, when I needed assistance uncovering all this, the dimensions of that scam we call TIF, Bob Fioretti came through with some key documents. Maya always makes fun of me when I say that. But, yeah, you know, it's true. Bob Fioretti did that for me. So I have a little warm spot in my heart. Plus, he got Bobby Hull, this is a totally other story, to autograph a picture of Bobby. Do you know who Bobby Hull is, D?
Yes, I do.
Really?
Hockey player.
Very good.
His son played for the St. Louis Blues.
That is excellent.
Yeah! I met Brett Hull at Target.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. There's a picture of Bobby Hull right outside our studio. Anyway, Bobby Hull was one of my heroes when I was a kid growing up, and so I always appreciate Bob Fioretti for that. Don't think, Bob, I'm going to be voting for you in this primary, though, however. But I will always appreciate the fact that you got Bobby Hull to sign that picture for me.
All right, we're going to you with the live stream chat now. Last night's debate, if you could describe it in one word, what would that word be and why? Ben Joravsky, if you could describe the debate last night in one word, what would it be and why?
Competitive. They were fighting. And they went at it. That's what I would say. Feisty. How about that? There's another word.
Feisty. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, let's see here. We're going to the live stream chat now, and let's see. Boy, it seems like every time I go to the live stream chat on the show, I find it hard to read the chat. Okay, here we go. Pat Rod, his word, desperation. From everyone but Bernie.
Yeah. That's a good, that's excellent, because they were desperate. They're feeling the burn in a different way. If you get my drift.
Yeah, I think we do. All right, let's see here. On to the live stream chat. Thank you very much, Pat Rod, for weighing in there. KMA Barry says chaos. Chaos was his word to describe the debate last night. I agree with KMA Barry.
I know you were having a hard, you were like, this is getting to be too much, because they were just like yelling over each other.
Everybody at one time. I couldn't take it. Anything else you'd like to say about chaos?
Yeah, well, I don't, see, here's the thing. Once you've, the conditions of the debate sort of lend themselves to chaos. For instance, let's say you ask a general question along the lines of what's your position on healthcare, and while giving the answer, candidate Dennis blasts candidate Ben. Okay, so then under the rules of the debate, candidate Ben gets to respond because he was directly named. But the moderators, you could tell, want to move. They have this sense of being fair, making sure everybody gets more or less equal time. They want to move to candidate Monroe, right? But meanwhile, candidate Ben, wait a minute. you got to let me respond. And so that's where part of the chaos starts, where the candidate, speaking of Monroe Anderson has entered the building. Monroe Anderson has entered the building, looking very dapper as always in that super cool hat. And so that's where I think some of the chaos emerges, just the terms and the condition. So if you blast me in the debate before the question goes to Monroe, I want the opportunity to respond. And so then Monroe will be like, what about me? I get a chance to talk. And that leads to chaos.
Shout out to Kyle. Kyle says last night's debate was a great primer of what is fundamentally farcical in application, dysfunctional in process, and pointless in substance in our modern debate structure.
Whoa,
Whoa,
man.
you're a good writer,
Pointless.
Kyle.
That is good. Kyle, you should get a job in the back rooms writing quips for Bloomberg. He'll pay you well for it. He'll just blow it when he delivers them.
Oh, we played that audio earlier of we played side by side Obama and Mayor Pete. Jay Marie weighed in and said, "Wow, Pete, he's a thief."
Jay Marie, I prefer to say he is showing his respect and admiration for Barack Obama, who is a master. Again, I liken it to Kobe Bryant studying Michael Jordan. Throughout the 90s, many young players were studying Michael Jordan. Clearly, Pete Buttigieg he's like into the late hours watching clips of Barack Obama, emulating, just like bringing it into him, making him part of him. And he just then he does his inner Obama when he comes out, and he's hoping it works. But here's the funny thing: it's not working with black people.
Yeah.
You notice that, Monroe?
Right, exactly.
It's not working with black people.
Right. But going back to Kobe, when they first game, when he played it, he was 18. He played against Michael. He was asking Michael for tips on the court while they were competing. I thought that was hilarious.
I was. And by the way, I saw that. I remember that game. I remember Kobe leaning over and talking. All right, we're on a tangent with the tangent. Yeah. I love Kobe Bryant. That was part of his genius. He was unafraid to learn from people who were older than him.
Yeah.
He asked questions. Jordan talked about that at the memorial service.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I learned of it. Watching the memorial service.
Memorial service. And Mayor Pete is doing the same thing.
Right.
With Barack Obama.
Exactly.
And finally, Kyle's one word to describe last night's debate, which you can weigh in as well on the live stream chat. One word to describe last night's debate and why. We'll try and read them throughout today's show. Kyle's word, pointless.
Kyle sounds a lot like McDumpkey. Anyway, I love the debate, Kyle. I just got to say, man, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment.
So that's what's going on locally. We'll keep you posted if any stories become available throughout today's show. Also, feel free to weigh in on the live stream chat. Follow us online at Benny J Show or on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show on Facebook and Twitter. You can send us an email if you like, bennyjshow@gmail.com. And also, we were just talking about the local races. It's primary season, and Maya Dukmasova and Ben Joravsky have been bringing their lunch pail into the studio and recording several backroom deals, wising everybody up on what they need to know about the primaries, talking congressional races. Hell, they even talk about the Water Reclamation District gig.
Yes, we do, by the way.
And by the way, Ben's still not a candidate. I'm trying to get Ben to run for that, and he still won't do it. He loves water.
I love water.
My God, you'd be perfect for it. And a lot of other local races, things that you need. Like, who are the delegates? The delegate system in Illinois is so damn confusing. Go check it out, the Backroom Deal. Find it at chicagoreader.com. Maya Dukmasova, Ben Joravsky, they do a fantastic job, and you should go check that out. Go download them. We're going to be right back with Monroe Anderson. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
Hey, commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Monroe Anderson in the studio, veteran Chicago journalist, legendary Chicago journalist, former spokesperson for Mayor Eugene Sawyer. Every Wednesday he comes on our show, and people don't know this, he's the president of the Chris Matthews fan club. He's got a I Love Chris tattoo. And
Right.
he
like Dr. D is White Lightning.
We'll talk about Chris. Monroe and I had a great Chris Matthews debate last week, and since then Chris descended even lower. But you know what? He's so bad, I'm starting to feel sorry for him, okay? All right, anyway, Monroe, before he comes on the show, he sort of promotes what he's going to say on the show on his Facebook page. And this one, oh my God, my Bernie Sanders lovers, they ain't going to like this one. I'm upset by it, and I'm a Bernie guy. Everybody knows it, but this is Monroe on Facebook. Trump is Putin's Republican candidate of choice. Bernie is Putin's Democratic candidate of choice. Sanders is also the one Trump wants as the Democratic standard bearer. I agree with actually everything you just said there. What's going on here? If Sanders win, will it be 1972 all over again with the Republican candidate winning 49 states? Or is this a new era where the times are a-changin', very good, Bob Dylan, with solid progressive policies about to be put into play? And are you, like me, afraid that our incompetent president will fail in preventing the coronavirus from spreading from sea to shining sea? See you on the Ben Joravsky Show. We'll be talking about this. God, so much to unpack there, Monroe. The first thing is 1972, we'll get to this later, but just so our younger listeners, 1972, long before they were born, an election that is just permanently etched in the mind of geezers like me and Monroe and Jim Carvell and
heartbreaking.
And Chris Matthews and Bill Clinton and even Rahm Emanuel. 1972, George McGovern was clobbered by President Nixon in the biggest, I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest landslide. Maybe the FDR race of 36 was a bigger landslide. Anyway, I would like to point out, though, we'll take a deeper dive. I'm probably going to write about this for the reader, Monroe, because despite the fact that McGovern got clobbered in that election, the Democrats held on to the Congress. Okay? They held on to the Congress, the House of Representatives. Okay. They lost a few seats, but they still held on, and they gained seats in the Senate. So I always make fun of the electorate, particularly the electorate in Chicago, which is really one of the dumbest electorates I've ever seen, you know. But having said that, they are capable of voting for a president of one party and then turning around and voting for a congressperson of a different party. Just pointing that out as a number one thing. So in other words, even if there's a landslide, no matter who the person is at the top.
Okay, now you
so
said-
just pointing that out.
Okay, let me make myself clear here.
Okay. Oh, you and Nixon.
Okay,
He's feeling his inner
exactly,
Nixon.
right, right.
Let my man
Yeah,
perfectly clear.
Right. This is not anything I'm hoping for. This is something I fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making, and as you know, I mean, I boldly went out on that limb that nobody else did in predicting that Trump would be impeacched.
Yes. Oh, you went beyond that. I think the limb you went out on said that Trump would no longer be president by the 4th of July of, was it 2019 or I forget which 4th? Yeah, 2019, right? Right?
No, I don't think I went that far.
Oh, I think you did. Where's
to,
Joyce when I need her?
We'll have to find the tape.
Okay.
Call up WCPT. Tell them we need a tape.
Yeah, sure, they'll take my calls.
Right.
Take my calls about as soon as they take yours.
Okay, anyway, this is what I'm saying is that this is my fear.
Okay.
And if that happens,
yeah,
then we will have 4 more years of Trump unleashed completely because he won't have to worry about getting reelected. He won't have to worry about being impeached again, although they could impeach him.
Why not?
Exactly.
I disagree with that point.
Well, no, because the problem is if he keeps the Senate, then it will be impeachment, the sequel.
Listen, here's the thing about Trump in a second term, and this is like a whole other conversation.
Okay.
Donald Trump is unhinged. Donald
Yes.
Trump has no self-control.
Right.
Donald Trump is incapable of sticking to what he has to do. And so you know, as well as I do, that Donald Trump is going to do something that's impeachable. You know that.
Well, he's done it already since the last impeachment.
Since the last impeachment.
Exactly. He's
So
done
it's-
it already.
Yeah, so whoever's in charge of the Congress, in the House or the Senate, doesn't matter in terms of Donald Trump's behavior. He's going to do something stupid and offensive.
He's going to do things between now and November. He's done things already between now and November
that are effectively impeachable acts.
Exactly. So that's going to be possibly our saving grace.
Well, okay. There's all right. Look, so much can change in politics in the world between now and then.
Right.
But essentially, the position that you have taken, and is it James or Jim Carville? Is it the
James Carville?
Okay, I always get it wrong.
Yeah.
James. Sorry, James. The position that you've taken.
I call him Carville.
Okay, Carville. Whatever. Carville, you, Rahm have taken this position.
Yes.
By,
and a whole bunch of other people.
And Chris Matthews.
Yeah, right.
All right. Okay.
And everybody but the Bernie bros.
Yeah. By the way, what do they have in common? Old geezers. Okay. Just saying. They've taken this position that nothing has changed in the world since 1972, and that the exact same replay of 1972 will occur in 2020 if Bernie Sanders, a left of center Democrat, socialist Democrat, is nominated as a Democratic standard bearer. That is the position they've taken, and that's the position they're holding to.
I have a friend, white woman.
All right. How old?
In her early 60s.
A geezer, just like the rest of us. Go ahead.
Okay. Her husband is a computer person, banking person.
All right.
He's middle of the road.
Okay.
She says, if Bernie is on the ticket, it's no way that a Democrat's going to get, that the Democrats will get his vote. It just won't happen.
So first of all,
and there are lots of people out there,
and it's just the problem on the other side too. And this is the part of the equation that the Rahms and the Carvilles and other geezers don't look at. The Clintons. This is the Clinton strategy. And they don't look at the fact that for every middle-of-the-road person that would say, I consider voting for Michael Bloomberg, but I will vote for Trump over Bernie. Just think about that. Just think about what that.
Oh, they won't vote at all.
Okay, well then, that's fine.
Because Trump got a bunch of.
They won't vote in the presidential race.
Yeah,
but they will
in
vote
the general.
No, but they will vote in the congressional race. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe they will. Maybe, or they may stay home. You know,
well,
I
okay, I'll give you an example. I know somebody very close to me, I will not name names, who could not bring herself to choose to vote for either Lori Lightfoot or Tony Preckwinkle. Okay, just
yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But there was an aldermanic runoff on the ballot,
Yeah.
and so she went and voted in that aldermanic
Right. No,
runoff.
that happens also.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that if you're a voter and for some reason you cannot stomach voting for Michael Bloomberg or Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, you still have a whole ballot full of other races. So you should just go out. I remember I knew a lot of lefties. This is going to stun you. I knew lefties back in 1968, 4 years before McGovern, who could not bring themselves to vote for Hubert Horatio Humphrey on the grounds that he was supporting Johnson's war in Vietnam. And so they did not vote for him. I even knew a lefty who voted for Nixon in that election because they could not vote for, essentially did not want to vote for President Johnson's war in Vietnam. So sometimes the shoe's on the other foot. And guess who won in 68? The Republican won in 68, Nixon, in a large degree because the Democrats nominated Hubert Humphrey to...
I was there. You know,
that is correct. You were
I was
speaking to you like you're a millennial.
Yeah, right. I was beaten. I was the first journalist beaten by the Chicago police.
That is correct. They knocked some sense into you then, but you've lost it since then. The point is, Monroe, it could go either way.
Yeah.
So, like your mainstream friend who could not vote for Bernie but might vote for Bloomberg, there's people who will not vote for Bloomberg.
Right.
This is I know this.
Yeah, right. No,
I know them.
Okay, so what's your point?
My point is that either way you look at it, you lose. I mean, you're gonna.
Right. No,
you run the risk of losing.
See, what you're telling me is we're gonna lose.
No, I'm saying that there's two different strategies.
Okay.
In other words, the Clinton strategy.
I know what you're arguing, but okay, this is the fact so far. Bernie hasn't brought any new players to the table. It's the same old Bernie bros.
Who has Bloomberg brought to the table?
Well, I'm not. I want Bloomberg's money, not the candidate.
By the way, we're open to Bloomberg's money too here at the Joravsky Show. I pointed that one out a few times.
Right.
He's giving everybody money.
Right.
Notice he hasn't given us any money.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So no, I want his money, but
Bloomberg wants your vote.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you this. I'm gonna put you on the hot spot.
Okay.
All right. Bloomberg or Biden? Who do you think is a better candidate for the Democratic Party?
Biden.
Bloomberg or Steyer? Who's a better candidate?
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg or Klobuchar?
Close. Let's flip a coin on that.
See, I think that Bloomberg brings a lot of negativity, to put it mildly, to the ticket. Now, it's funny I'm arguing this because I've said if I was a centrist, I would go for Bloomberg, but I'm not a centrist.
Right.
I know how visceral the intensity of opposition to Michael Bloomberg is. Brandon Johnson has entered the studio, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Johnson has entered the studio. And so he's hearing everything I'm saying. I know how intense the opposition is to Michael Bloomberg. And I know how brilliantly, this is the Brandon Johnson transition, Elizabeth Warren has just cut him off the knees at 2 debates in a row, Monroe. And so any centrist out there, and I'm saying this even though I've said I would support Bloomberg if I was a centrist, any centrist out there who thinks Bloomberg's money can just buy away all this negativity is kidding him or herself.
Yeah, you maybe. We'll know a week from today.
That is correct.
Yeah, we'll know because it's right now. It's all theoretical.
It's all theoretical.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. We don't even know how South Carolina. He was in the debate for the South Carolina primary. He's not even on the ballot in South Carolina.
Right. And so he didn't get invited to Reverend Al's breakfast this morning with the ministers.
Oh, I meant who? He didn't get invited?
No, he was the only one who was on the stage who didn't get invited.
I didn't get invited either.
Well, you weren't on the stage either.
Brandon Johnson, did you get invited to that? Nope, he says no.
For different reasons.
For different reasons. All right, before we take a break and bring Brandon on the show, what were you going to say about Trump and the coronavirus?
Okay. He doesn't know what he's doing, as usual. He's unfit to be president, and he's ignorant, and he's incompetent. So he doesn't know what we're doing. We're at risk of facing a pandemic, and he's in denial. He's upset because he says that the Democrats, blame it on the Democrats. When you can't blame it on Obama or Hillary, you just do a generic Democratic blame. But anyway, he says that the Democrats are talking about this virus coming here to hurt him and his election and hurt the stock market. They want the stock market. This is almost Rube Goldbergian in concept. The Democrats are pushing this idea that the epidemic, coronavirus, will be coming to America, which is driving the stock market down. And with the stock market going down,
this man is insane.
Right.
This man is seriously
right,
insane.
I know. Then he will lose the election. So he's saying that they got an airtight defense against the virus. They can keep the virus out of here. And so they got it under control. In the meantime, he was also said that they have a cure for it. They've come up with some cure for the virus, which they haven't done at all. He's confusing the coronavirus and the Ebola virus because he does that. That's how Trump rolls. And so, in the meantime, because he I think it was a year ago or so, he dismantled the health organization operation that does viruses.
Having heard what you just said,
yes,
I want to make an appeal to your friend who's maybe listening, and even if he's not, I'm going to make an appeal to him, your middle-of-the-road friend.
Yeah.
That level of insanity that Monroe just articulated, that reigns within the brain of our President of the United States, cannot be tolerated. Even if you're afraid, middle-of-the-road banker, of what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren may do in terms of regulation, even if you're afraid, you have to realize that the existential threat caused by the spread of a disease and the inability of our president to seriously address it and to view it as anything other than like a game in Twitter has got to make him completely, what is the word? He is not worthy of being our president.
Right.
He's lost your vote. You cannot possibly fear whatever regulatory controls a Sanders or a Warren would put over your banking industry over like an epidemic.
Right.
I mean, see, Monroe, the level.
Okay, well, this is the other thing, because anything, since he's gotten into office, anything Obama, he's tried to kill.
Yes, that's true.
Right, and so there was this, and I'm terrible in medical things, but there was this communicable diseases operation for pandemics and what have you.
Yeah.
That Obama had set up, that he dismantled about a year ago.
Yeah.
So we don't even have a defense for this anymore, because it was Obama thought we should have, when the Ebola virus happened, Obama called in all these specialists and set up this whole operation.
So this is, I say this to my Republican friends, my mainstream Democratic friends, my middle-of-the-road friends. Are you more upset about that, the destruction of entities that are protecting us from these diseases, or are you more upset about what Bernie has to say about Fidel Castro, who died? I can't remember when he died. Do you follow what I'm saying? Are you more upset?
Well, and I have a different point of view on it. Those who would vote for Trump over Bernie, what you're telling me as a black man is that you're more comfortable with a white nationalist in the White House than you are with a socialist, a Democratic socialist.
That's pretty deep, isn't it?
Right. No, that's an eye opener.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a choice: Democratic socialist or white nationalist.
Right.
I'll go for the white nationalist.
Yes. And by the way, they're going for the white nationalist anyway. You know, they're just using Bernie as an excuse.
Right.
If anybody, it's like anybody who could look at what just you said, just do it like a objective analysis of what you just said. Donald Trump's reaction to this threat to our country. Okay, coronavirus is a threat to this country.
Right.
His reaction is to try to boil it down to a tweet that he could use to clobber Democrats with.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
That's his response.
Right.
How could any rational human being who's not a racist,
Right.
who's not a white supremacist,
Right.
respond by saying, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump over a Democratic socialist or over Elizabeth Warren?
Right.
Because they say it about Warren, too. You know, I mean, I've heard
Well, it's whoever wins is they're going to say it about it. They'll figure out how to make Bloomberg a socialist.
It's all said and done.
He's saying if he wins, he'll end up being a socialist.
All right, before we take a break and bring Brandon on, I have to ask you this leftover from last week. Last week, we had a great debate on this show between myself and Monroe over Chris Matthews. Monroe vigorously defended Chris Matthews, said he loved him the way I love the Bulls. Since then, Chris Matthews has descended even lower, Monroe. Chris Matthews, his comments about linking somehow or other Bernie Sanders' victory in Nevada he likened to the Nazi invasion of France at the start of World War II. I thought the man has lost his freaking mind.
Well, I'd like to point out that Chris Matthews is not a boomer.
He's older than a boomer? Is that what you're
Yes.
trying to say? What does that got to do with
Yes.
anything? So what is that? Is that a defense? I will say this.
No, he's an old white man who thinks he's a liberal because he was against us sitting at the back of the bus, and he liked Obama, so that makes him a liberal.
Wow. I'm not even sure about the first part of the statement. Okay, about the sitting at the back of the bus part of the statement.
Well, I'm sure he didn't want the schools integrated.
Yeah,
but-
you know, I just want to point out that there was a contingent of the Democratic Party, and you know this better than I do, that said to Martin Luther King, "Go a little slower, Dr. King. You're pushing too hard, Dr. King. You know, yeah, it's bad that you got to sit at the back of the bus, but
Nina Simone made a song about it.
that is correct.
Mississippi, goddamn.
Please sing the song. before
No,
we go to break.
no. I don't want to lose all your listeners.
Well, I do it every day. All right, when I sing my songs, Monroe Anderson in the studio. We'll drop the Chris Matthews conversation for the while. We'll take a break and bring on the great Brandon Johnson. He's just back from South Carolina, where he's knocking on doors for Elizabeth Warren. He's going to give us the Elizabeth Warren line, talk about last night's debate, and a lot of other things on our minds. We'll be right back with Brandon and Monroe. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them: ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time: ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right, it's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Hey, live streamers. You can download this show. You know that, right? It's true. Just go to Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Subscribe. You can get it any day. If you missed anything from the live stream, you can catch it on the download. Downloaders, we live stream this program. Yeah, it's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. Join said YouTube channel, and you can join the live stream chat. You ever thought to yourself, boy, I'd like to make fun of Ben Joravsky? Well, you can join the YouTube live stream chat and make fun of Ben Joravsky.
Correct.
Oh my God, it's so much fun, everybody. Or you can give him a compliment, but you can really make fun of him. Check out the Chicago Sun-Times on YouTube. Hour number 2 coming up next. All right, Brandon Johnson on the tambourine, everybody. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, February 26th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we got to thank the following unions again for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Hey, thanks, unions. Also, today's Ben Joravsky show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, February 26th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got Monroe Anderson in studio. Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson is with us. And it's the return of Jaquie Algee with Ikeya Johnson of SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Brandon Johnson has joined us. Brandon Johnson has joined the conversation. Brandon, you're a Cook County Board Commissioner. You're a Chicago Teachers Union activist. You're the pride and joy of the West Side. But you've been spending a lot of time on the road lately, singing the song of praise for Elizabeth Warren. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's always good to be with you, man. I appreciate it. The style of music, there's still some there's some questions there that I have there. Just kind of reminds me of my childhood and like, hey, are the monkeys? It's just bad anyhow. But so other than that, man,
other than trashing boomers, go on.
Yes, I love you, but no, it's been a very exciting time. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren is absolutely brilliant by far. She is the smartest person who is running for office. That is very, very much obvious, and how that is translating. Of course, I can speak to that, but. No, I've had a really unique opportunity. When I was sworn in a year or so ago, didn't think that I would be one of the national surrogates for a top-tier presidential candidate. But her, platform to bring the type of big structural change that we all know that our country desperately needs is something that has been quite attractive to me. And I've had a chance to carry this message in places like Iowa, Virginia, South Carolina, which is just an amazing place to be and visit. And in Michigan, spent some time there. We'll be returning there on Sunday. And what is becoming clear to me, though, is that, it's not just that our country desperately needs big structural change, that we have a communication gap between, individuals who would be impacted by the type of transformation that we are calling for in the Elizabeth Warren camp, and how you actually effectively communicate to the voters who would be most impacted. And I'm referring to Black people. And that's something, that, again, that has attracted me to her candidacy. There is no other candidate that has as a thorough of a working agenda for Black America. It just pales in comparison to Elizabeth Warren. It's actually quite bold in her approach, particularly around historically Black colleges and universities. That message has resonated throughout the different states, including our own here in Illinois. We're talking $50 billion more dollars into our historically Black colleges and universities.
What about Pete's Douglas?
Yeah, so I think when I say the most dynamic platform, because Elizabeth Warren actually has not just a working agenda, but a track record of demonstrating that her work can lead to transformation for Black folks, it's why I believe hers is far more substantial. Pete, put together a pretty decent PowerPoint. That's not very difficult for someone who's a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, that's the very least I think he can do.
Where did I hear
I know.
those talking points before? Yeah. I heard that sounds vaguely familiar.
It is. And Amy was right to call it out. Look, as a public school teacher, look, I know the students who can cram the night before for a test and do well. That's Pete. But as far as the working agenda for Black America, when we talk about historically Black colleges, when we talk about, making sure that Medicare for All speaks specifically to the infant mortality rate that is overwhelmingly plaguing Black women and brown women, that's actually pretty substantial. You got to speak directly to the issues that impact us. But we know a third of Black educators will be trained and educated at historically Black colleges and universities. The reason why that plan is so substantial, far more than Pete, is that you can't talk about investing in historically Black colleges and universities that will pump out more Black educators and still support school privatization. Those things are opposed to one another. The reason why there has been a decline, the decimation of the Black teaching force, is because of the policies of school privatization and school closing. So those messages have been, really, they've been received well. Her position around affordable housing and how we're going to pay for it. I think the thing that's actually most substantial is the fact that, here's a woman who essentially created a new agency for our country, the Financial Bureau Protection Agency, and how that has pumped $12 billion back into families that would have been lost otherwise. And so we have a lot of work to do, and I'll talk more about that, but those are the messages that have been resonating the most in those states.
Okay, just for the record, I like Warren a lot. I wanted her to run 4 years ago, but I knew that it was going to be inconvenient to have her in against Hillary. That would just cause all sorts of complications. I was an early fan of hers this time, but she's lost the way somewhere, somehow. I don't understand what happened, but it's happened. Just watching the debate last night, she took a stab at Bernie, but she didn't hit him hard enough. She spent time wasted on Bloomberg. I thought it was a waste of time on Bloomberg since he's not even in the race. She repeated the basically attack that she did in the last debate, and where she gained a very nice spike as a result of that attack. But then she repeated herself instead of taking it someplace else.
All right, I completely disagree with what you said, but I would love to hear what Brandon has to say first.
Well, look, I think as we know, a week ago, her debate performance was just absolutely she knocked it out the park, right? And so that's why she's now polling second nationally, right?
You're talking about last week.
Last week, and I'll get to last night as well.
Right.
But I think she elevated the conversation and created a real clear distinction within our party, right? Bloomberg is an absolute nightmare, and he is pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into Black media, Black outlets, to really peel away votes from really the progressive charge. And I'll get into that of why that strategy is not only dangerous, but it's intentional, and it's an attack against Elizabeth Warren than it is Bernie. But I actually think that her performance last night was actually pretty substantial as well. I don't think that she lost points because she didn't go after Bernie hard enough. Look, there's still some time here. What she had to do was to remind people, because this is what the American electorate needs. You have to repeat yourself over and over again. And because he's spending so much money in these places, and what I have found, people only pay attention when it's close to them. So we saw the debate last week. There's this general assumption, and I've found this out as I've had the chance to travel around the country, that people know very little about what happens outside of their communities, right? And so she had to make that distinction because it wasn't just about Bloomberg, it's about Tom Steyer. I was down in South Carolina last Saturday. I believe he was on his 37th mailer in the entire state. And I think that her distinction that she is making, I think she's got to be a little crafty about it with Senator Sanders, because again, ideologically, that there's some similarities there. The difference is, of course, is that she's actually been effective at getting something done.
All right. I want to address what Monroe said and then come back to that. And that is this.
Bring it on.
Okay. No, here's the thing. Monroe is of the boomer generation that is really concerned about Bernie. So I'm going to put that issue to the side for the moment.
I'm concerned about Trump.
Okay. All right. Well,
if somebody could bring me a signed affidavit saying that Bernie could beat Trump, it'd be fine.
Okay. But let's put that to the side. The notion that Elizabeth Warren should turn her attention to Bernie from Bloomberg, I don't believe is warranted, because I'll tell you why, and it gets at just what Brandon was saying. Michael Bloomberg has come into this race late with his billions of dollars. We had folks on this show, Brandon Monroe, who talked about how he's offering his organizers $6,000 a month, which is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a podcaster, and it's a lot of money for an organizer to make. So it's top dollar.
Or a retired journalist.
Or a retired journalist, okay? It's a lot of money. And so he's buying his way into this race, and you could see it in the polls. And if Elizabeth Warren, I think it's imperative for somebody, and I appreciate her for doing this, to point out who Michael Bloomberg is. And it's like Michael Bloomberg can saturate the TV with his ads that present one view of Michael Bloomberg to the world, and she's pointing out what this man's record is, what his legacy is.
She last night she made it personal, and that's okay, but it's not. I don't think it was that useful, because the people who she needed to appeal to is black Americans,
but
the black voter.
But Monroe, in all due respect, and that this is why she had to go after him, and I commend her.
But she didn't go. She should have gone after him on the slinging black boys up against the wall.
She has, and she's been very consistent about it. Now, whether or not she should repeat that over and over again, as opposed to his attack against women,
right?
Because that was her approach to really expose his record as it relates to his racist policies as a mayor with stop and frisk, but also to double down on his attack against women. Look, the bottom line is there's no other candidate in this race that has been more bold and more courageous. And all due respect to what Bernie has presented, there's clearly some capacity that he's already kind of built. And I think that's what the concern that many people have is can he expand and broaden his electorate, particularly in the black community? And the person who is the biggest threat to the progressive movement right now, because we have to bring in black voters, is Michael Bloomberg. Look, we all know this, about, 3.3 million black votes that we didn't have in 2016? Mm-hmm. If you break it down by states where Donald Trump won, particularly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, in Michigan and Wisconsin in particular, Donald Trump won by 11,000, 20,000 votes. And in those prospective states, that's like,
some of that was suppression, voter suppression.
Well, of course. And so this is where the problem is, because the very people in which Bloomberg is trying to appeal to, the handful of us who are actually going to show up, though we vote pretty consistently in a block, if we lose those votes and we don't inspire folks, Bloomberg is the biggest threat to this election cycle right now, because as Elizabeth's made it very clear, to trade one billionaire for the other, we've seen that in Chicago, right? Where you just wanted Daley gone so bad that people accepted Rahm Emanuel, and Rahm Emanuel administered one of the greatest terrorist attacks against black communities in the history of America by shutting down 50 public schools in one cycle, mostly black. Over 1,000 black children are missing still to this day, where there's no record for them. And so the Democratic Party is in a very dangerous place, because electing someone like Bloomberg, who says he is on our team, now you're stuck with someone, right? And so this is the part that I think what we have to do in terms of building a broader, bold, progressive agenda. It's why Elizabeth Warren, I believe, provides the greatest pathway to that. If you look at the results in Iowa in particular, Elizabeth Warren won the reddest county and the bluest county. And not because she flipped Trump voters. She convinced folks who live in red districts who vote blue to actually come out and vote. I was down in Greenville. We're not used to this in Chicago, in places like this in Iowa, where you have entire communities that are represented by Republicans. We're just not used to that. And so when you meet the handful of Democrats, there's actually more Democrats in those spaces. But because those places have been dominated by Republicans, that also is a part of the suppression. Elizabeth Warren has pulled those voters out of the shadows in these red parts of the district. Because even if you look at Illinois, let me just finish this last part.
Okay.
If you look at Illinois and how President Obama changed this state, where the parts in the state were deep, deep, deep red. And then in his election cycle, it was more kind of fuchsia pink. It wasn't because Republicans were voting for a black Democrat. That did happen, but it was more Democrats in red parts of the state that were coming out because they were inspired. And if we can't do that as a party, and I believe that's the threat that Mike Bloomberg has, no matter who the nominee is, especially if it's Bloomberg, you can guarantee 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Go ahead, Monroe.
Okay, I was arguing tactics about last night, in that the biggest problem is Biden, actually, for Saturday. It's not
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg or Bernie. Bloomberg's not even in the race.
Right, or
And it's not-
Steyer.
yeah, right, or Steyer. Steyer has a significant thing. This is why I think she should have taken on the police treatment of blacks in New York City in the debate last night, because I think it's going to be 60% blacks voting on Saturday.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, and so you want to, and now you have Clyburn, who came out this morning
For Biden.
for Biden.
Yeah.
And that's going to make a big difference.
Well, so Brand, I'll put this to you. I've heard you now extol the virtues of Elizabeth Warren on several occasions, and then I look at the polls, and the polls show that in terms of the black vote, we'll just deal with South Carolina. I think Steyer's doing better than her. Biden's among black voters, and Bloomberg's not in the race.
Right.
But nationwide, which I'm baffled, shake my head, Bloomberg's doing better than her. Why isn't her message reaching black voters?
Well, as I said before, there's a communication gap here. And part of the challenge is, and this is going to get probably too much in the weeds of sort of campaign strategy. What Senator Warren has done, which I actually appreciate, but it does create, just some distance between the voters we have to reach, is that she has gone into multiple states early in a very deep way, where other candidates have concentrated in a couple of states and then they move on. Because for Elizabeth Warren, it was very important for her to not just establish a presence there, but how do we have something that's sustainable? Now, whether or not that's going to be the most effective strategy, I mean, we'll know by Tuesday. Yeah. But I think part of the challenge is that the individuals who are communicating in South Carolina were being outspent, just like Bernie outspent us in Nevada. And our challenge, of course, is we have the right message, we have the right messenger. We're doing deep organizing because everywhere I go, people know her, they're familiar with her.
Right.
But the broader
and she
elected,
has 1,000 workers out there.
she's got a lot of them, but she's got them spread out through 31 states, right? Where Bernie, will concentrate in any particular area and then he'll move and pack up, and just like many other candidates have done that. And so there's media buys that have just been very difficult for our campaign to keep up with. What our hope is that these last couple of debates, as we go into South Carolina, as Elizabeth begins to surge, that she comes out with a very, very strong response from the electorate in South Carolina. And then by Super Tuesday, I think it's still anybody's game. In fact, I think we won't have much clarity after Super Tuesday still. But the part that I'm most inspired by, though, is that down ballot, Elizabeth Warren's operation, I mean, they're endorsing very local races. I mean, she was the first presidential candidate to endorse Kim Foxx right here in Cook County. Eventually, Bernie followed that lead. And so that's the part that I'm actually most impressed with, because, look, we all want to run these races to win, and that's what our goal is. But we have to build a much more substantial, broader coalition, particularly those of us who see through a progressive lens. And our blind spot is still black voters. What I'm confident about, though, is because Elizabeth Warren's agenda that speaks directly to the black folks, our experiences, that's going to begin to resonate over time. And look, a few people have had a little bit of a head start on there, right? And that's a challenge. There are people who are spending billions of dollars as opposed to like the real grassroots operation that we have. But I know this as someone who has run for office. Communicating to black voters there is an art and a science to it. And part of that science is being able to repeat a message over and over and over again. And it's hard to compete with that.
By the way, that's not black or white. That's 101 of human beings.
Exactly.
And people tease me all the time for all the TIFF articles I've written, Brandon, and I always tell them, oh, you think I'm just going to write one? That's going to do the job? One article? You got to write it 50,000 times to get it through the head, people.
And now 20 years later.
Yeah, 20 years later, look at that. People go, TIFF is bad.
Right.
I won.
Right. And in politics, what you have to do is tell them what you're going to do. Tell them what you did. And tell them what you've done. You have three different things.
Reverend Jackson had some very profound advice to me some time ago, and he just says, Brandon, when you speak through the media, when you communicate with our people, and I think this is with any voters, you have to say it as if it's the first time they've ever heard it. And that's, if you listen to Reverend Jackson speak sometimes, it probably makes more sense because, here's a guy that we probably could recite some of his speeches, right? Especially his key talking points, right? Because it's like, look, you have to say it as if it's the first time. Right?
Back in the 70s, when I was a Tribune reporter, every Saturday I was at Operation Push. That's what I did. I covered Push. And so I knew Jesse's speeches by heart.
Yeah.
Because they were actually, from week to week, it was pretty much the same speech. He would change 10, 15% of it, and then the rest of it would be the same message.
This is what Trump does. Trump, he literally repeats the same thing. He keeps it simple. He says it over and over again, and it works.
And he lies.
Well, yeah,
he lies.
The
lying
lying helps. All right, Brandon, let me ask you this. Having spent time campaigning on behalf of Elizabeth Warren in Michigan and South Carolina and dealing with the local communities that you've been encountering, is your sense that the primary concern of voters that you meet is electability?
It's not the primary concern, but it is something that comes up quite a bit. It does. I think the primary concern is, how will my, as Monroe was alluding to, how will my day-to-day living conditions be impacted by this person's leadership, right? And then, in a very close second, or depending on which region I'm in and which voter I'm speaking with, there's this electability question. And that is something that I think speaks more to the depression of ideas that have taken place. I remember having a really nice roundtable with some black voters in Davenport, Iowa. And the black men in particular were very much concerned about what folks would refer to as the pie in the sky idea. That it wasn't so much that they disagreed with it. Their worry was, if we run on that, is that something that we can actually achieve? Even though I believe it's the right thing, can we achieve it? And so then they capture that sort of concern about what's achievable with who's electable. And what I'm constantly reminding people, and this is what we have to do all over the country, when we vote our values, we are still in a much more substantial place. We are better off voting our values. Mm-hmm. And because we don't vote our values is why people like Trump win. So let's look at the state of Florida. Trump won by 113,000 votes. There were over 1 million black votes who either did not vote or were not registered to vote. Let's go to the state of Georgia. He won by 211,000. There were 900,000 black folks who did not vote. And go on and on. Michigan, he won by 11,000 votes. There were almost 400,000 black votes alone. Pennsylvania, he won by 44,000 votes. There were over 367,000 who didn't show up. Wisconsin, Trump won by 23,000 votes. There were 130,000 black folks who either stayed home or weren't registered. And so we have to begin to speak our values because our voters exist. It's a matter of how we pull them out.
All right, let me tell you this. The response, listening to what you say, the response, I'm going to do my best to articulate the worldview of Rahm Emanuel, your good friend, and James Carvell. I always butcher his name. And the two of them say, I've heard them over the weekend. This is why it's on my mind. I cannot believe I spent valuable hours, not hours, but valuable minutes of my life listening to these two. They say it's a pipe dream for Democrats to believe that they could rally people who have not traditionally voted to get them to the polls. They think that's a losing strategy. Loser! That's what they say. That's what Rahm says. I heard him say it with his good pal, Chris Christie. We talked about it yesterday on the George Stephanopoulos show.
Take a chill pill, man.
Oh, sorry, Rahm. It's an unproven strategy. It's a losing strategy. You should forget voters who've never registered. They're never going to register. They're never going to vote. What we got to do is get people who voted for Obama in 2012, then voted for Trump in 2016 to vote, come back to the Democrats. What's your response to Rahm?
Well, I think the part that they're missing, if you look at the state of Florida or Wisconsin, some of those voters actually did vote for Obama. They were blue votes. They just didn't vote in 2016. And so there are enough voters out there who are registered, who have voted before, who just weren't inspired in 2016 because we didn't speak directly to their issues. And so what Rahm and James are conflating is this notion that younger, newer voters are going to come to the table. Of course, you're going to have some of that. But there are actually voters that are out there on the table now for us to get. And if we're not speaking to how we transform affordability in this country, how we have people that have access to health care, how we fund our public schools, of course, how we reform this criminal system, those are the things that people care about. They also care about their pocketbook. The fact that black folks overwhelmingly believe that we have an unfair, unjust taxing structure in this country, the fact that they overwhelmingly support that, we should be running on that. When Elizabeth Warren says, look, 2 cents on your assets, above a certain amount, you can keep the first, 50 million or whatever it is, but we're going to come and we're going to ask you to pay 2 cents on a dollar for that, and that can fund universal child care and raise the wages of the people who actually do that work. Of course, that was a nice plug because Jaquie Algee is here. Yeah. So raising the wages of those who actually do that work, that's all very much possible. And she is calling for a smaller wealth tax than Franklin Delano Roosevelt did when he taxed up to 75%, and those were his friends.
Yeah. Right, now let's bring a boomer in because he's very worried.
Yeah, right. I'm very worried. And what I want to know, because early on it looked like Warren was going to walk away with it, and she lost her momentum. Why did she lose her momentum?
It's a fair question, Monroe. I think part of it is Elizabeth Warren she's the only candidate who's been hit from the left and the right and the middle. Bernie gets hit from the right? Pete and Amy, they all get hit from the left. Joe he just gets hit mostly because he's punching himself. Right? I'm just saying. Yeah, God bless you, boomers. I need to go get your boy. He's struggling.
I think Joe is not a boomer. I'm going to defend the boomer.
Joe is not a boomer.
He's older than a boomer.
That's right.
Yeah, he's older than
well,
a
go
boomer.
get your grandpa then.
Boomer. He's a boomer.
So I think part of it is like Elizabeth Warren. Let's not kid ourselves that our country is still very misogynistic. And that this is a very racist, misogynistic country. And when Monroe talks about being worried, how do you think a brother feels at 43 years old with 3 black children I'm raising on the west side of Chicago? Yes, I'm worried about neighborhood schools. It's not just about an election for me. And this is why I think we have to be very thoughtful about how we build a bold, progressive coalition that speaks directly to our issues. Because if we're not doing that, even if you're able to pull it off in November, and you don't have substantive change that's going to affect people's day-to-day, that worry doesn't go away after an election when you don't have health care, when you don't have a job, when unemployment is Great Depression-era numbers, particularly within black communities, when you don't have access to transportation. People in the Southland can't get downtown without taking 4 buses and getting in an Uber. So there are real challenges. And look, this is not just black folks on the west side or south side in various communities. I've knocked on doors in Iowa. Look, people, white people who are poor, they got it bad too. And so we got to speak to the issues that affect black, white, brown folks that are struggling every single day. And if we can't win on that type of bold agenda, then you're not going to govern on that agenda either, which keeps us at the status quo. And that's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I got to say, to the point you made about people from both sides of the spectrum attacking Elizabeth Warren is absolutely true. Many of my lefty friends attack her all the time. They talk about how she used to be a Republican. I defend Elizabeth Warren, just for the record, okay? Because,
thank you, Ben.
Well, I don't think that's a fair criticism because she used to be a Republican. Donald Trump used to be a Democrat.
Yeah,
okay.
5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I mean, it's like ridiculous.
Ben, if you were to read some of my college papers, hopefully they never come out, of how I used to write when I was 18 years old, I was raised in a black Christian fundamentalist home. So if you ever find some of those college papers, you would think that you were reading something out of a very conservative book.
Is that right?
And so people grow, they transform all the time. That's actually what you want.
Yeah.
Right? And because even though, of course, Bernie has his stripes, tried and true, but the fact of the matter is, what has he been able to accomplish with his theory, with his rhetoric? That's not enough. When I ran for office, people expect more from me as a black man, as an elected official, than just a hope and a dream of what's possible. And that's why, of course, I moved to change the county ordinance around how people who have arrest records and are formerly incarcerated, how they can access housing. That's a part of Elizabeth Warren's plan. Her plan speaks directly to the issues that we deal with on a very local level.
Wait, have I ever asked you the Sergio Mims question? I don't believe I've ever. Sergio Mims is a friend of Monroe's mine. He comes on the show all the time. He's a film critic, and he has a lot of opinions about politics. He came on the show once. I think Monroe was with him, and he articulated that, in his humble opinion, the reason why Kamala Harris's campaign and Cory Booker's campaign failed to win support of black voters is that black voters were disappointed. They were blaming Harris and Booker for their frustrations and disappointments with Obama. And it was like they came to this realization that voting for a black person wasn't going to make it. But that's the Sergio Mims theory.
Yeah, and Sergio is contrarian and can be a cockeyed thinker.
You can see Monroe doesn't agree with this theory. But so what's your thought? What's your reaction to the Sergio
I'm going to have to go with Monroe because I don't know Sergio. No, I'm teasing. That's not
Sergio's
fair.
a good guy.
No,
Defending Sergio.
He's
That's
my
a good friend of mine.
Look, I can't speak to people's exhaustion, around Obama's presidency because he's obviously still a very popular president.
Right.
What I can say though is, when you have someone like Cory Booker who still has not, sought atonement for his failure in education policy, working with Chris Christie, the Republican governor. Kamala Harris was not a progressive prosecutor. We all know that. And so this is why you actually have to have a record. If you're going to change and transform, you're going to apologize for what you did and then move policy that speaks to the direction in which we should go in. That's Elizabeth Warren's platform. And everything that she has pushed for, she is the only candidate right now who's been protested by the charter school lovers, right? Because her position against school privatization has been so strong. So I don't think it's just an exhaustion that people have of black leadership. It's more or less like, what positions have you taken in the past that have harmed black people? And Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, unfortunately, had a different upbringing politically than I did.
All right, fair enough. Are you having heard Brandon Monroe? Are you really feeling your Elizabeth Warren now? Has it converted you back to Elizabeth Warren?
I want a winner. I mean,
so your electability is everything in your mind.
Electability is everything. Although if I could wave a magic wand, she'd be the one.
Well, keep waving.
She'd be, but it's not looking that good right now.
Strong gold ring that you have, just flash that in there.
And I got to say, what we didn't mention is I think she made a big tactical error. This is where I disagree with Monroe started by attacking Bernie in that debate. I think that hurt her. I think that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren.
It wasn't much of an attack. I didn't think you done that last night.
No. The attack 2 debates ago in Iowa, where she started talking about a private conversation they had about whether that hurt her.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I would not that any politician would ever take advice from me on anything, but.
She has.
Don't attack Bernie. You guys have the same base.
Warren has the same problem that the 16 Republicans had 4 years ago, in that they didn't attack Trump too tough, or if they did, they paid for it because he had this following, the strong
I beg
following.
to differ. I rewatched, for reasons that I'm not quite sure, the Trump debate of 2016 about 2-3 weeks ago. I watched it.
Yeah.
And Marco Rubio and Cruz were coming at Trump. Any
and
Democrat
they paid for it. That's the point.
No, but Trump was
they
emerging.
paid for it. Yeah.
What I'm saying,
I get your point.
Yeah, the point is that they were like the Democrats last night. They figured their only chance to win was to go at the front leader, and they went at him, and they went at him hard.
Well, because that's traditional politics. Because remember when Elizabeth Warren got hit from Bernie and from the right, she had surged to first place for those 2 weeks. In fact, Elizabeth Warren, for the record, is the only candidate that polled nationally higher than Joe Biden for those 2 weeks that she was polling high. So I still think that she's got an uptick. There's some room for that. But I think it's really going to come down to how effective our ground game is, and of course, if we can actually get on the air. But I do appreciate the time.
And get some more money.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Brandon Johnson, Monroe Anderson.
And Brandon, you have a show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sunday mornings. Thank you for that. Sunday mornings. And I'm supported by a lot of folks in labor, just like Ben is. Sunday mornings from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the hottest political program on this side of heaven. I don't know what happens on the other side, but I do know our side of heaven is the hottest political program. And you can catch us every single Sunday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on WCPT, Progressive Talk Radio.
You mean the Progressive Talk Radio that fired the only progressive talker in Chicago? That Progressive Talk? I'm looking at Jaquie. Is that the one that he's talking about?
That is the one.
I don't hold a grudge.
Brandon, you do a fantastic show, man. I've listened to your show
awesome.
for a long time. You do a really good job with the
show. And he's not the only one on that show.
Oh, yeah. Of course, my faithful co-host, she's going to kick my butt for that, saying that.
She should.
Because she's been filling in for me. Candace Castillo, who's an amazing organizer. She's the chief of staff for Jeanette Taylor.
And was on our show on Friday.
Yeah, Ben Joravsky show listeners know Candace Castillo. She's on the Brandon Johnson show as well, or Sunday mornings as well.
She came on Friday and she killed it.
She was on fire.
She was on fire.
She was on fire.
And right before the Heartland Mamas. Man, what a combination that was.
Go download that show, everybody.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dee, for the reminder. Brandon Johnson, Monroe Anderson, thank you very much. Jaquie Algee on deck. We'll bring her on when we return.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Yeah, here's the one point, and this is a classic why somebody's better figure this out. You're in Nevada, the site of one of the worst mass shootings in American history. Just 2 years ago. It's not that far in the rearview mirror. Bernie Sanders' records on guns is horrendous, from assault weapons to litigation against gun manufacturers. Not one person on that stage had the gumption or the wherewithal to say...
Well, Biden mentioned in kind of a throwaway line.
Yeah, literally a throwaway line with that many people dead. When you're talking about Democrats in the primary and his record on guns, it's more representative of Vermont than it is where the country is and where the Democrats. And that tells you these candidates haven't not taken him seriously. And they woke up this morning. They have to take seriously his record on guns.
He has the support of many leaders for March for our lives. And that's because they understand his record was more about representing rural communities in Vermont than about gun violence that happens in places like Chicago or happens in L.A. It's very different.
Here's the thing I will tell you. As a person assigned by President Clinton to both pass the Brady bill and assault weapon ban, Bernie Sanders was always on the side of the gun manufacturers. And what my bigger point is political, not policy, which is you're on a stage in Vegas with one of the worst mass shootings, and nobody brought it up dealing with him seriously.
The winner is from South Korea. I thought it was best foreign film, right? Best foreign movie. No, it was did this ever happen before?
Eroding beaches on Chicago's lakefront, warmer winters in the upper Midwest, microplastics in our water. What can any one person do? Our best hope for saving the planet and ourselves is through the power of we. Get to the 9th annual One Earth Film Festival, the Midwest's premier environmental film festival. It's March 6th through the 15th.
March 6th through the 15th.
Right, write that down. March 6th through the 15th.
Did you say the power of weed?
The power of we. W-E.
Oh.
We, not we.
Not we.
Yes.
Oh.
The power of we.
Well, you have to clarify it.
Yes, clarify these days. March 6th through the 15th, 26 films.
That's correct.
48 venues.
That's correct.
4 counties.
That's correct.
That is not correct. 28 films, 48 events.
Oh.
4 counties. Engage with filmmakers and experts. Venues include Tesla Gold Coast, Loyola University, Plant Chicago, Old St. Patrick's Church, Chicago Cultural Center, Lake Theater in Oak Park, and more. go to oneearthfilmfest.org. What is that again, D?
oneearthfilmfest.org.
That is correct. oneearthfilmfest.org.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Jackie Algee in the studio, SEIU, and she said, "We, not weed." Jackie Algee is very happy to be back on the show, and very happy that marijuana is legal in the state of Illinois. But that's not what we're talking about today, right?
That is not what we're
I know you have a lot on your plate that you want to discuss. I will get to all that. D, you got an update before we do this?
We just encourage everybody to find us online at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on Facebook and Twitter. If you got a question, feel free to ask us on email, bennyjshow@gmail.com, BENNY, the letter J Show, at gmail.com. And for those on the live stream, I always forget to mention this. If you haven't clicked like, turns out that kind of helps us. So if you're listening right now, watching right now, go click like. Turns out like that's a good thing. YouTube likes that. Maybe more people will find out who we are. So hit like while you're there watching the program. And feel free to weigh in with your thoughts on last night's debate. I'll try and read those comments before we roll out of here.
All right, very good. All right, Jackie, I'm going to be asking you a ton of questions about politics, your thoughts on the presidential debate, your thoughts on the presidential election, your thoughts about Rahm Emanuel as a person giving advice to the Democrats. My personal opinion is that the Democrats should not take advice from Rahm Emanuel. He didn't do such a great job with his own political career, but that's just me. You may disagree with me, Jackie. It's a free country. She's shaking her head. Nope, I think she sees eye to eye with me on this one. Rahm Emanuel, we were talking about this yesterday a lot, was on the George Stephanopoulos show this weekend, Jackie, with Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey. What political universe in the world exists? What media universe in the world exists where they would think these two jokers would offer anything resembling substantial advice that any politician would want to take? One guy got thrown out of New Jersey.
Right.
The other guy got thrown out of the city of Chicago. But somehow or other, they're giving advice to Democrats?
Not only are they giving advice, Ben, but they're bosom buddies. I mean, I watch this week on occasion, especially when I'm, at home from church or doing otherwise. And so I watch it, right? I look forward to seeing it. But then this duo that has come, I don't know where it came from, but I have suspicions that both of them have, political aspirations, if you would. My take on this is that we've always known that he wasn't going to go and quietly away and you'd never see him again. And so I think for him, it might be on the national level. And so hence he's doing all of this, advising and coming across, releasing his book and, all of this that puts him in a place of knowledge, if you would, so that if you have a candidate who is looking for someone to team up with and or add to their prospective administration, you get someone like a Rahm who, in national perspective or opinion, might not have been so bad for Chicago, because when you hear him on the shows, he talks about all the great things that he did for us, which we know is not true. But, and then similarly with Christie, he talks about all the great things that he's done, not only for the state of New Jersey, but in support and advisement to 45. So you get the two combined, and it's like, why wouldn't you trust them? Because, why else would George have them on his show?
Well, I'm going to answer that. I know it was a rhetorical question you asked at the end, but the reality is this: when it comes to mainstream media, there's only certain amounts of, how do I put, there only goes so far left, and then they'll pull back. And so from their perspective, Rahm Emanuel represents kind of the left, which is so bizarre.
That's right.
If you're here in Chicago, they view it, well, he's a Democrat.
That's right.
He worked for Obama.
So automatically
he's
that's right.
And
there's the connection.
And they put Yvette Simpson on, who I think is really good. I don't know.
I like her.
Yeah. But I talk about this all the time. I can't get over this. Just follow me in this. I didn't mean to go on this rip, but since you're helping me out here. Okay, so on that show, you got George Stephanopoulos, who's basically a centrist Democrat, but he kind of plays it down the middle. You got Chris Christie, who's a Republican and a big fan and friend of Donnie Trump. I don't even know the lady's name, but she's a Republican. She's there as the Trump supporter. I think her first name was Sarah. I can't remember her name. Then you got Rahm, who hates Bernie, hates the left, hates unions, particularly hates Chicago Teachers Union, may hate your union second much.
Oh, listen, I had my own personal experience with him when he first came into office that was clear for me enough to know where we stood and as it related to him and how he looked at people like the 90,000 people, mostly women of color that we represent every day. I was real clear on that.
Do you want to go any further, or is that enough?
Well, yeah, that might be enough. I mean, he was just rude, in the presence of other allies and members. And so that, to me, was enough said. He didn't have to come out and say it. It was enough said.
Here's the deal with Rahm, who I can't pretend that I know him. I've only met him maybe twice in my life. But Rahm has this thing where he feels compelled to insult the left wing of the Democratic Party. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm not Freud. I'm not going to put him on the couch. I can't analyze him, but he has this thing. The number one at the top of the list is my dear friend Karen Lewis, and who I hope is listening.
Yes.
And he insulted her to her face.
Yes.
And she combined two elements that he has issues with. I believe he has issues with strong black women. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
And he hates the teachers union.
That's right.
He hates them.
That's
Okay.
right.
And so she represented both. He was like, shut up, get in line, tell your followers they're going to do X, Y, Z, and they're going to like it. And Karen Lewis, if you know her, Jack, no one tells Karen Lewis
That's right.
what she's going to do.
That's
okay.
right.
I've known her for a long time. You're not going to tell Karen Lewis what
That's
to do.
right.
And so he was hurt, but that exposed so much about his attitude toward people on the left. Shut up, get in line, take it. And we're seeing that in this primary right now, where generally the attitude expressed by so many people, centrists to lefties, shut up, get in line, vote for whoever we put on the ticket. And
Oh, yeah. I mean, before he got into office, he was trying to come, especially toward the latter part of the campaigning, trying to come across as, well, let me just make friends at least, or, seem like I might be open to. But once, it's like, signed, sealed, delivered. And once it was, it's like, I don't have to do anything for you.
Yeah.
And he was real clear on that.
I don't have to do anything for you. But anyway, just to finish up before we move on, so you got Rahm, Christie, the Republican woman, and George Stephanopoulos, and then you have Yvette Simpson. So you got four people get to talk, and then Yvette gets to talk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know. I saw.
It's kind of tilted against the left.
No, it's tilted. You're absolutely right, Ben. But I do respect her, admire her, and I was just such a fan cheering in my own living room, or den rather, when she took her spot. It's like, no, you're not just going to talk over me.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my point across, and she did.
All right. Yeah. So let's get to what's on your agenda for today.
Okay. So I've got a lot of things on my agenda in terms of what SEIU, healthcare, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, and Missouri, but more specifically to Illinois, that we're working on this legislative session. And so, as you know, Ben, our communities are suffering big time on a number of levels. But one in particular is community hospitals. We've got community hospitals that people are going to get services from, and they don't get good service, not because they don't have the staff who care or are, professional enough to give the service and knowledgeable enough to give the service, but they don't have enough staff, right? And they don't have enough equipment, and they don't have, people are overworked and underpaid, et cetera. And so as a result, you get poor service. And people in our communities do not deserve that, just like People in other communities don't. But the other thing that is so disheartening is the fact that the life expectancy of people that live in Inglewood in comparison to people that live in Streeterville is 30 years difference. So if you put that out there, if people really understand that people in Streeterville, if people don't know where Streeterville
Well,
is, yes.
Jaquie, real briefly, a lot of our listeners are outside of Chicago.
That's right.
So Englewood and Streeterville. Explain Englewood, explain Streeterville.
Okay. So Streeterville is predominantly white affluent around the Northwestern Hospital campus, if you would, on the lake.
In an area called the Gold Coast.
The Gold Coast, right.
That may help things.
That
the Gold
might
Coast.
help things.
Yeah.
That's right. And then Inglewood, which is where I was raised, still have a home there, is predominantly black. There is a good number of Latino brothers and sisters on the west portion of Inglewood, but predominantly black. And working people, those that have jobs, but so many that don't. And so as a result, they live in a state of poverty. Schools have been closed, never to reopen. They've condensed them. So they've condensed the schools down to a school or two for all kids to go to, which we know is not good, especially in today's world, because kids are different as people are. So it's not always the safest for kids to go to schools that are not in their communities and neighborhoods. And why should they have to, right? But then hospitals, similarly, they're talking about closing hospitals, but and not improving services. And so you'll have people in those communities, not just for the emergency aspect of going to a hospital for emergency treatment, but we're talking about preventative care as well, and we just don't have that in Inglewood, so that we could increase the life expectancy, and that's not right. And let me just say this: it's not just Brandon made a good point earlier, how these issues don't just apply to Inglewood and black and brown communities. It also applies to white communities in the rural parts of this state, where you're talking about us having to go 8 to 10 to 20 miles to a decent hospital, which might be a Christ or a Little Company, if you're coming from Inglewood. There are people, our white brothers and sisters who live in rural parts of the state who have to go 40 and 50 miles to get hospital services because they don't have a community hospital or clinic. And so, we need fair funding. And, this word cannot be overstated. Fair is fair. We need fair funding in our community hospitals, 1, so that they can thrive, 2, so that they can give the service and support to the communities that deserve them, and 3, that they can also employ. Because you take a hospital like Roseland, for example, which I currently live in that area, and Roseland has been around for over 90 years, and they have employed people from that community for that period of time. So not only is it a service provider, but it's also a job creator.
So when you say fair funding of community hospitals, who are you requesting the funding from?
The state, the Illinois Department of Housing or Health Association. Yeah. And guess what? They got it. They do have it. And if they, in addition to them, then there is the federal government. When we talk about Medicaid and Medicare dollars coming in, we should get the fair share portion of those dollars to go to those hospitals as well. Right now, currently, some of those hospitals get funding under both of those programs, because of the population they serve. But guess what? The Northwesterns and other hospitals get it too because they provide services to that same population, and that's not right.
Now,
I'm not saying that they should not provide the service, but they don't do extended service. They patch them up and send them on because they don't have the insurance coverage to afford them to stay.
Now, let me ask you this question. This does not directly relate to the issue of fair funding, but it sort of relates. And I do not know the answer to this question, so I'm going into it ignorant. If the person who works at a hospital in Roseland, and for our listeners, Roseland is far south, east side of Chicago, a poor black neighborhood.
It is.
It's further south and east from Englewood. All right. Does a person employed by a hospital in Roseland make less money to do the same job as a person employed at Northwestern Hospital, which is, as Jaquie was saying, on the Gold Coast and in a much wealthier area?
Ironically enough, in some instances, no. They don't make different, and that's a problem as well. So you got a Northwestern, and people just assume, I had someone just say this just to me on yesterday, that their son had worked at Northwestern, and she assumed because it was Northwestern that he was going to make all his money, right? Not true. Maybe a couple dollars more than the Roseland worker who does the same job, but not $10, $12, $15, $20 more as people assume because of the location and the wealth in the area and the community. And so that's not right either. I mean, we fight for and we represent Northwestern workers, and we fight for them the same way. They should not have to be working like they do and come into employment at Northwestern and not be paid adequate.
All right. Before we take a break and come back and talk a little more about politics, is there a website or any information you want to give out? People want to know more about this issue in this campaign.
So, pardon me. So, and thank you for asking that, Ben. So, the Fair Funding for Community Hospitals has legislation, right? That provider assessment legislation. And so there's Senate Bill 3010, and we have Senator Aquino, who is the co-sponsor on Aquino. I'm sorry, I pronounced it incorrectly.
From the northwest side of Chicago.
Yeah, right, Aquino. And so he's sponsoring the Senate side of it, and then Representative Welch is sponsoring Chris Welch, who's a great guy too. He's co-sponsoring the House Bill 4543.
4543, very good. All right, and any website you want to give out before we take the break?
You
have a lot of information there.
I do have a lot of information, and I am not seeing a specific website for that, but you can always go to SEIU Healthcare Illinois, and we have our website, and I know there's information on there.
All right, very good. Jaquie Algee, my guest. We're going to take a break, come back, ask a little political question, one or two political questions from Jaquie Algee. Be right back.
I've seen a whole lot of catfish, some turtles. No gators yet, though.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
I think there's a lot of incentive to blow up disagreements in the party as like huge fights, because I think it's important for us all to recognize, and we do this in our rallies, to recognize the people who have been in this fight to allow us to have this window as we do right now. Nancy Pelosi, that's Mama Bear of the Democratic Party, And
Someone's got to. Got to keep Ben Joravsky on his toes. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, I'll take us home, but we're not home yet. We still have Jaquie Algee in the studio. We're not home yet. She's got a whole bunch of things. I said, I'm going to ask you about politics. She goes, no, Ben, I want to talk about this, that, and the other thing. All right, Jaquie, we'll get to what you want to talk about. Dennis also wants me to talk about who's coming on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, today we had a great show. Tomorrow, more of the same. Our cannabis conversations continue tomorrow. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is correct. But I don't know who. I can't remember who Lisa's bringing in tomorrow.
Lisa Solomon always comes in with a guest. Cannabis conversations. We've had some very compelling guests these last few segments. So be surprised. Who knows who Lisa's going to bring?
And maybe Lisa will bring Dennis some weed.
Okay.
Peter P.C. Cunningham, my good friend of the Centrist Persuasion, will be here tomorrow. Maybe bring his guitar.
Live stream listeners, get ready for that one, huh?
PC is probably going to tell me why Michael Bloomberg's a great guy. Be interesting to hear him pull that one out of his hat. Or maybe Michael Bloomberg's a little too right even for my good friend Peter P.C. Cunningham. So PC will be here tomorrow. And Miles Kampf-Lassin, definitely of the leftist persuasion, will be here tomorrow.
Yeah, last week he was gone, and we had one of Miles' friends, Miles' roommate, I think?
No. It was just a friend of his from New Zealand, and he spoke with that New Zealand accent, which you will now imitate.
No, I'm not going to offend
Hello,
any.
mate.
Okay. There with the New Zealand audience.
Anyway, I'm sure, oh man, Miles is chomping at the bit to talk about how they went after Bernie last night. Miles loves Bernie, ladies and gentlemen.
And if you're listening on the live stream and you missed any of the show, you can be able to download the show. Give me about an hour, about 4 o'clock, I'll have both hours up. And if you're downloading, always check out the live stream, Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time. It's a great time.
All right. So, Jaquie Algee, we were all set to talk politics, but you said, Ben, we got to talk.
We got to talk
fair tax. I'm always ready to talk fair tax.
Yeah.
Fair tax is no joke. That is, I got to give Pritzker credit for this. I did not vote for J.B. Pritzker in the primary. This is always a confession moment. But the man's been a good governor.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it.
Absolutely.
Prove me wrong, JB. Prove me wrong.
I hope and pray he never does. He's been one of the best.
So he's taking the lead on the Fair Tax Initiative. That's going to be on the ballot in November. My greatest concern, Jaquie, even though fair tax is so important to the state of Illinois, the future of Illinois, and funding government in a fair way would raise the top rates on the wealthiest people. It's a flat tax right now, so even broke-ass podcasters like me and Dennis pay the same rate as J.B. Pritzker does. It would raise the top rate. That's going to be a tough one because it's a referendum. It's got to pass with 60% of the vote.
That's right.
And there's going to be other things that people are going to be talking about, like the presidential race.
That's right.
So,
but I'll say this in all fairness. Fair is the word, right? We need a fair tax in Illinois. We've always needed one. It should never have been a flat tax. It makes no sense that we've got wealthy people like our governor and others who are paying the same percentage of taxes that those of us who are less wealthy are not wealthy are paying. And what a fair tax can do in terms of just what we were just talking about. When we're talking about community hospitals, that can add additional funding for hospitals. It can add additional funding for our schools. It can add additional funding for housing and our streets. I mean, the list just goes on. It just is lined up. So when you talk about infrastructure and being able to, bring in new jobs and job opportunities, all of that is related to a fair tax. If you have a fair tax, it's going to just help to boost the economy. And when you boost the economy, if people have more money, they're going to spend more money, Ben. And I'm not suggesting, nor am I implying, nor am I saying that people should spend all their money and not save any, because we definitely need to save. But if you have more, you'll spend more, and that can only boost the economy. All of the studies that have been done on states that have a progressive tax prove that. And we just need to be able to step up to the plate and do the right thing.
This is one of the this is a sort of a related matter. One of the most frustrating things I find when I listen to the presidential debates is when they get around to the issue of Medicare for all. And, Bernie's for it, and Elizabeth Warren more or less is for it. And the other candidates rip it. And they talk about how it's going to raise. How are you going to pay for it? How is raising taxes? I always find that frustrating because perhaps even more regressive, if such a thing is possible, than our flat tax plan in Illinois is the way we fund health care. Health care is based, the premiums you pay are pretty much the same across the board, no matter how wealthy you are. So J.B. Pritzker's probably pays the same copay that if he goes to see his doctor, they're not go, oh, JB, you're wealthy, you're worth $3 billion. I'm going to make you pay $500. Ben, you're not wealthy. You get to pay $30. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
So it's so unfair. It's so the premiums you pay are the same. If you're roughly the same age, same back, you know what I'm saying? I pay probably the same amount as Bruce Rauner.
Well, do you remember several years ago when Warren Buffett came out and he said, this makes no sense that my secretary is paying the same. That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. And you get someone like him, who I respect, to come out and say this is wrong and we should change it, we should fix it, makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, Warren Buffett, I give him credit. He's one of the wealthiest men in America. He may even have more money than Bloomberg. Maybe we have the wrong gazillionaire running for president of the United States. I would be much more favorable to Warren Buffett than I would be to Michael Bloomberg on so many issues, but put that to the side. Anyway.
So we want to say vote yes for a fair tax, and that's for everyone.
Yeah.
Not just the people that cannot afford it.
And I will say this, that election is not until November. Bob, we'll be talking about that a lot.
That's right.
Because in terms of Illinois, pulling us out of the national picture, this is a critical moment for Illinois. I fear this is going to be lost, Jackie. This is a critical moment. How we finance government, whether we'll have money for all the projects that we want, the educational spending. And Pritzker, he was pretty skillful in that. He got a lot of criticism for my Republican friends in that last budget address. He essentially said, if you want the money for all these programs, you're going to have to vote for the fair tax because these programs are contingent on that funding. And so many people go, oh, that's blackmail, it's extortion, which is funny, my Republican friends. You're worried about it when Pritzker, you call it extortion when Pritzker does it with his budget, but you look the other way when Donald John Trump does it with Ukrainian president.
That's
Just throwing that out there, my Republican friends.
Just throwing it out. So again, vote yes, even those that can afford it. Not can't, but those that can.
Yeah. All right, and then the other thing you had there, you want to talk about that census?
The other thing, we want to talk about the census, man. I mean, the census is happening right now. People need to get ready. They're going to start getting postcards to say to them, it's census time. You need to fill out the form, get it in. It's very simple. So there'll be 4 ways that people can respond to the census, which is a little different than it has been in the past. You can respond by mail. You can respond by phone. You can go online, which is very new. People have never been able to do that before. And or you can have an enumerator or someone who can help you to fill out a form, right? I can't stress enough how important it is. That's right there with the fair taxes, right there with voting. The census is so key and critical. We're talking about $675 billion that we stand to lose if we don't get the right count. We've got to get the right.
All right, so just so you know, folks, what Jackie's talking about, a lot of federal dollars are allocated to states by according to how many people live in the state. If you undercount the census, there's fewer people in the states, fewer federal dollars for the state. There's we lose congressional seats, less influence.
That's right.
And so you know, that's why it's important to have an accurate account. The whole system is already tilted against states like Illinois, and I'm going to avoid a discourse in electoral college system which works against people who live in states like Illinois and California and New York and even Texas. But since Texas votes with those states that get more representation, they don't cry. Just imagine if the Electoral College was the other way, Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
If instead of Democrats getting screwed in the elections, it had been Republicans
you already know. You already know. Let me just say this last thing about the census, that there are no questions that ask your personal information. So, for example, they don't ask your social security number. They don't ask how much you make or how much you got in your bank account, right? They do not ask any immigration questions. And so people can feel secure that whatever they say, the majority of the information or questions centers around who lives in your house on April 1st. April 1st happens to be the launch or kickoff day. And so people answer those questions, get and send the form back in, mail it in, or email it in, or however they do it, and they're done. Again, I cannot stress how many people that we, just in the census of 2010, that we lost, or how much money we lost as a result of people not responding. A majority of the people that were not counted, which was really weird to me, Ben, when I found it out, was 0 to 5. People don't count babies, as a living person in their home. But the 0 to 5 population was the most undercounted in the state of Illinois.
Is that right?
That is correct. And so we
Why?
just need, because they don't, if you're in your house and you say, who lives in my house that needs to be counted for census? Oh, my son that's 18, my daughter that's 24 that comes here sometimes and stays when she's in, and then my wife and I. That's it. But you don't count the grandbaby that, is running around on the floor.
The grandbaby eats.
The grandbaby does eat. Okay, and then lastly, we've got prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are all out. Oh, they're just out the roof, and you got 45 that doesn't care about people having to decide if they're going to pay rent or their mortgage or have some food on their table and take a prescription or a medication that'll help them to keep eating.
By the way, I love how you won't call him by his name.
I can't call him.
You won't mention his name?
I cannot. And so we're working to get a prescription drug, this board, I'm going to tell you in just a minute, affordability board. It's affordability board for prescription drugs. And so we're taking a group of people down to Springfield on Tuesday in support of this legislation. Representative Gazzardi is the lead sponsor on it, and it's HB 3493. And then we're going to go back on Wednesday for fair funding for community hospitals. And we're just going to keep going until people do the right thing.
You're going to bother them until they say, all right.
And absolutely. That's what we do.
All right. Now, Jackie, before I let you go, I have to get your thoughts about the debate that's being framed in the Democratic primary. I know you're never going to tell me who you support.
I'm not.
Because you're too cagey that way. What I do is I get around this. I've asked my guests many times, well, name your top 3. That's how I get it. All right, name 3 that your top 3. But I don't even think you're going to do that, are you? She's got that poker face on. Not gonna do it. You can ask that question anyway what you want.
Not gonna do
I'll tell you mine. There you go. Okay.
Tell me yours.
Mine. There we go. Because you won't do it. All right.
Who's your top 3?
My top 3 have remained the same for about 2 weeks now. Number 1, Bernie Sanders. Number 2, Elizabeth Warren. Number 3, Joe Biden. All right.
Wow.
I used to have Andrew Yang in there, and then he dropped out, so Joey B moved up to number 3.
Okay.
I got a fondness for Joey B.
Okay.
That goes back a long time. I don't know something about the guy.
Can I just share this with you real quickly? When Brandon was on, he talked about Elizabeth Warren, who he absolutely is in favor of.
He's loves Elizabeth Warren.
But it reminded me of Brandon. Brandon introduced her. She was here, I want to say last July, at the Auditorium Theater. Place was packed.
Yeah, I remember that.
Majority women, majority white women. I would say of, affluent and otherwise, but majority white. Brandon was out. Brandon, well, he's one of my sons, and I claim him as we claim each other. But he was just outstanding. in his introduction. It was like, you would have thought, it was his mother or somebody up there. He was just that passionate about her. And when you told, when I heard him speak today, it reminded me why he is so enamored with her. He just really is.
Well, I've had my ups and downs with Elizabeth Warren in this campaign. I was not really feeling the Warren during that debate in Iowa when she went after Bernie, but I just feel she did such a good job in these last two debates going after Bloomberg, and not just on the issues of Bloomberg's attitude in the past toward women. But this is really important. I'm just going to get this out there. Michael Bloomberg made some really insane comments, which he's trying to distance himself from, regarding the economic meltdown of 2008, which he essentially blamed. He blamed that on laws that forced banks to give mortgages to people in redline communities. And listen, people say all kinds of stupid things in their lives that we regret. If you accumulate all the dumb things I said or have written in my life, Jaquie, then it held me. You got to be able to say, you know what? I can't believe I said that. Man, was I stupid? I apologize. But in politics, you cannot. It's almost like some people have this attitude that if you admit you were ever wrong, it's like this huge concession. But to the point, Elizabeth Warren, she was a champion in the O's for regulatory laws that would force banks to give loans in redline community that would protect people who were going bankrupt. She was always looking out for the people who were at the lower end of the total poll in terms of income and protecting their rights in fiduciary matters, financial matters. And I believe I have to give her credit for that she has always been a champion in that arena. And that is not really, I don't know how that translates into votes, Jaquie. You understand what I'm saying? That's not something that people can understand easily. It doesn't fit onto a bumper sticker easily. Bernie's very visceral about Medicare for all. People know where Bernie's coming from all the time. He has that advantage, I think, over Elizabeth Warren, who sometimes she gets into the weeds of the policies, but it's in the weeds.
So let me ask you a question. How about this for a ticket? Sanders and Warren.
I do not favor that ticket. I'll tell you why. I think they bring too much of the same thing to the table in terms of just their generation, the age. And I say this as an old guy. I believe you got some younger. I was floating this one last week because I follow these things really closely, Jaquie, and I sense that the Democrats could be heading to a broker convention. And I think Elizabeth Warren, in the back of her mind, senses the same things. And she's determined to stay in the race because she thinks that she could be a compromise choice between the Bloomberg wing and the Bernie wing. In which case, you put her up there with Castro, who dropped out of the races from Texas, bada boom, bada bing, call it a day. So if I'm thinking of Elizabeth Warren ticket, I'm along those lines. If I'm Bernie Sanders, I just believe you have to have a black woman on the ticket. That's just me saying it. And a younger...
Wow.
Stacey Abrams, not Stacey Davis Gates.
No, Stacey Abrams. I love Davis Gates is, one of my daughters too, but Abrams is who I was talking about.
Okay,
yes.
I know.
Yes.
But around here, when people say Stacey, they usually think Stacey Davis Gates. So are you concerned? Like we have this conversation all the time. Monroe, a dear friend of mine, is very concerned about Bernie Sanders' impact at the head of the ticket. He's more conservative than I am, believe it or not, Monroe Anderson. He comes on this week. Every week he's crying about that. Do you share his concern about a leftist at the top of the ticket, or do you think it's an exaggerated concern?
Here's what I'll say or share with you. What I'm hearing on the ground and my network of people is they want whoever can beat him.
Him who will not be named.
That's right. And so, for some people in the boomer age group and older, he is a little too left for them. But if he could beat him, they're fine. They go in and punch his number, So, it's work to be done. I'll just be glad when we get to July or past July.
I mean, past the convention.
Past the convention, and we'll have that, him or whomever.
Yeah.
And then we can really give our focus and attention.
All right, fair enough, Jaquie.
And get a winner.
And all right, thank you very much, Jaquie. Thanks for coming on the show. Also want to thank Brandon Johnson, the aforementioned Brandon Johnson, and Monroe Anderson. Every Wednesday on the show, Monroe Anderson and I duel. Two old geezers arguing over Bernie Sanders. It never gets old. Never
that's
gets
a
tired.
segment name. Two old geezers
arguing over Monroe and me, doing it forever, arguing politics forever. Love them dearly, and of course, cannot do this show without the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Jaquie Algee can tell you, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning.
Oh, Ben, I forgot to mention something. Brianna reminded us. Tomorrow's a special day as well because tomorrow, our 1 year anniversary.
In this space.
In this space.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Ben.
Where's my cake?
I didn't get one.
Yes, 1 year tomorrow, February 27th. Good God, man. Time flies. Zoom. That's the airplane flying. Anyway, as I was saying, the man, myth, the legend, pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. They call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow on our anniversary day.
And he'll probably still call me that next year. And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast downloaders. We live stream this show. It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. And when you join us on the YouTube channel, you can join the live stream chat. Hang out with like-minded political heads and some trolls. It's a good time. See you tomorrow.
And for the record, I love puppies.
That's correct.